Hello everyone, welcome back to Booktuber. I'm Booktuber and I do reviews, or I attempt to do reviews, attempt being the operative word. Today we're discussing The 40 Rules of Love by Elif Shafaq. Now Elif Shafaq is a really popular Turkish writer. Everyone in Pakistan has at least heard of her, if not read anything by her. I'm lucky to have a really lovely copy because it's got this gold detailing. So I'm going to sort of start with a synopsis as I usually do because it sort of gives context. So the story starts off with a woman called Ella Rubinstein, who's living a pretty comfortable life, and she's got the first world problem of having no problem, and she has a cordial husband and she has children, but she has this inherent sort of feeling of dissatisfaction and she can't really put her thumb on it. So in order to fill up the emptiness, she sort of takes on a job as a literary agent where she comes across this enigmatic manuscript written by a writer called Aziz, I think. And it's all about 13th century Anatolia, which is actually Asia Minor, so it's modern day Turkey, and it's about Rumi and his encounter with Shams of Tabriz, who was a wandering mystic. And obviously a lot of other things as well, a sort of spiritual guide. And it's about their encounter, but also about the changes that reading about this encounter has on Ella Rubinstein's life. And during the reading of this manuscript, she sort of starts corresponding with the author and develops feelings for him. And then it sort of leads her to question a lot of things about her life. Now, obviously the plot is all well and good, but we're going to sort of dismantle a few of the themes and sort of the style. So the style of the text is polyphonic, which means that it has multiple narrators, multiple voices. So it's told from the perspective of Ella, but it's also told from the perspective of sort of people on the street, or a drunk in a tavern, or from Shams of Tabriz's perspective, or Rumi's. So it sort of varies, offering a multitude of perspectives in a very short span of time. Now, obviously, this is meant to generate interest and sort of make it really more effective. So at the heart of it, obviously at the heart of the narrative, you have 40 Rules of Love, which were originally sort of promulgated by Shams of Tabriz back in the 13th century, and these were allegedly sort of passed on and taught to Rumi in a 40-day seclusion in Konya, which is also part of which also falls in modern day Turkey. I think it's a city in modern day Turkey. I'm not sure if it has the same name now or anything. So it sort of shows how Shams of Tabriz used these rules of love, so to speak, to sort of transform Rumi from a mere professor and a kind of, a guide to the masses to a true mystic and a poet and a Sufi. So obviously historically, this is around the time that the dervishes came into existence, allegedly, in historical texts, and you sort of. So I think the use of multiple narrations, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, has about a couple of purposes. Firstly, I think that it's about sort of making the Sufism perspective, to have sort of making it out to have a universal appeal. So, which is why you show all of these different people, a couple of which are from entirely different cultures, and they all sort of, it kind of shows a cohesion in the text. And the second reason, which I actually came across in an interview that Elif Shafaq did, is that she wanted to imbue the text with a sort of spiritual quality in which a lot of the principles of Sufism, such as not taking yourself too seriously or sort of maintaining a fluidity in your existence, she wanted to sort of integrate that into the text. So, because obviously she felt that to control the characters too much and to bring them, to make them dance to the tune of accurate history would actually render them lifeless. Now, personally, I can't speak to the historical authenticity of the text because I'm not really well versed on Rumi. So, but it is obvious when you're reading it. It is obvious that obviously many accounts have been fictionalized, except for I think a few incidents which are really popular if you read anything at all about Rumi. One incident being that he was looking through his books, and Shams of Tabriz comes and he's like, "What are you doing?" And he sort of derates him for being somewhat not well read, and he throws all those books into a nearby fountain, completely destroying them. And he sort of prompts Rumi to unlearn all the things that he has learned in order so that he can embark on the journey to find himself. So with all these empowering and illuminating themes of transcendence and a profound journey to oneself, you would expect the book to be rather remarkable. However, I came across a very interesting critique. I've in fact written it. Let me find it for you. Now this critic says, the mindless stock phrases pile up, becoming actively irritating as the book goes on. This book is more evidence that good politics and intentions do not necessarily make excellent literature. Now, when I read this, it sort of rung a bell somewhere. I kept thinking that there was some sense to it, and I think what he means is that while obviously the narrative is beautifully written and there's, it's very crafty, but she uses so many Sufi quotations sort of out of context that it becomes a little tiresome after a while. However, I still found it to be a rather delightful read, and I would like that, like if you haven't read it, I would want that you give it a go, because it is entertaining, and it's also very knowledgeable. And if you have a different opinion to the one I've expressed, I would love if you sort of throw it in the comments. Because reading is such a subjective experience. Everyone takes away something different. And wait, my father has just come in. I think I'm going to maybe call him over. He's read this book and a few others. So I think that I'd want him to sort of maybe give us some historical context.
Hello everyone. I hope you enjoyed her introduction to Rumi and Shams Tabriz. I want to add just a little thing, that from where it all started, this Sufism and Muslim philosophical wisdom and all that. During the 9th century, this was the first time when Arabs came in contact with the Nestorian Christians, and since they knew Arabic, so they transferred the Greek philosophy and Greek knowledge to those Arabs. And this movement, cultural amalgamation, so to say, between Greeks and the Muslim Arabs took place. It's some kind of you can also define it as some kind of in-between or a gray area between Enlightenment and Renaissance. Okay. Now let's straight away come to my viewpoint on Rumi and Shams Tabriz. Shams Tabriz was a dervish, right? Rumi was a professor. He had a huge library that he inherited of his forefathers, and he read almost every book from cover to cover. So he had a good book knowledge about whatever he taught, theology and Islam and other disciplines. As against him, Shams Tabriz was a pure dervish. And as a dervish, he dwelt in the third dimensions. Rumi, through those books, was introduced to 2 dimensions only, right? And Shams Tabriz was living a third dimension. And Rumi had no idea of that. So when they interacted with each other, and by the way, in this book it's written that Shams Tabriz was divinely instructed to go to Rumi and show him the third dimensions, so that his wisdom, his knowledge gets profundity, which is missing at the moment. So when Shams Tabriz meets Rumi and they interacted with each other, and then Rumi introduced the third dimensions, when Shams Tabriz introduced third dimension to Rumi, that's when a real change in Rumi occurred. And then the depth with which Rumi then wrote poetry, that is reflective of much of the influence that Shams Tabriz had on him, right? For instance, let me give you the depth of Rumi poetry after he had interaction with Shams Tabriz, and he obviously underwent an influence. That Rumi said that God has created a mirror, a huge, gigantic mirror of truth, and then he shattered it and threw its pieces on the earth. And each one of us has one tiny micro piece of that mirror of truth, and we believe that we know the whole truth, right? If you try to understand just this saying of Rumi, you will realize that he has opened up a kind of a sea in front of you, and its interpretation is so profound that unless you have a depth of knowledge, you can't appreciate the kind of depth he has introduced. So that's the only thing I like to say, that Shams Tabriz was the real character who transformed Rumi and introduced him to the third dimensions, the spiritual world, so to say, and experienced it firsthand. And then his knowledge of the two dimensions amalgamated with the knowledge of the third dimensions, and that's what created Rumi, a world-class philosopher, a world-class poet, a man of wisdom that the world has never seen before. So that's like, that's what exactly I wanted to say.
That's his 2 cents. So there you have it, folks. 40 Rules of Love, and you can pick up your copy at any bookstore in Pakistan. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Please don't forget to leave a like or a comment. See you next time.